I've known RovyVon to make excellent keychain flashlights. So when they gave me the opportunity to review their S23 pocket searchlight, I jumped at the chance to check it out. Welcome back to Shoelights. So RovyVon has released this S23 pocket searchlight. It's supposed to be 4,000 lumens, which I'm sure it's not going to quite hit that. But I mean, the front of it is very unique. You just don't see quad reflector emitters like this in a pocket light. Usually it's a single in an emitter or maybe a quad TIR optic, but this is the first time I've held a quad reflector optic like this. And then of course RovyVon also has a very interesting user interface with a rotary dial and a combination E switch, and we'll check that out in a moment. But let's take a look at the ergonomics and the fit and finish. It's an excellent looking light with a really smooth anodization and a very kind of neat, shimmery gunmetal finish. The anodization is awesome. And you can also see that it's just got great little accents all over it. It looks streamlined, yet futuristic, yet classic. I don't know how to even explain it. Just a great looking light. Minimal branding and minimal decals, just enough to let you know what's going on. And, you know, look where the flappy doodle is. You can see it's nice and flat, unlikely to catch on things. You can see it's a little bit raised right here and a little bit right here. And then the actual face that the flappy doodle and port are on is a little slightly recessed, not enough to get in the way of a cable, but just enough that when it's sliding in and out of your pocket, it's unlikely to pull the rubber flappy doodle up. One thing that's also awesome about this flashlight is the tail cap has a picture of a magnet on it, denoting the fact that this is actually a magnetic flashlight. For a kind of large searchlight kind of thing, it's kind of interesting that they put a magnet on there, but it's welcome for me because I love magnets on my flashlights. The light comes in this retail packaging, which is full color on all sides and has kind of a UV trapping. Let me get the reflection. There you go. A UV trapping on a slight emboss on the flashlight itself. It's a handsome enough looking package. It's got some features listed on the back, but nothing in the way of charts or graphs or anything like that. On the inside is just kind of one of those plastic trays, and it has the flashlight, a charging cable, and a lanyard, and then a manual. But I do want to point out the flashlight comes with a battery, and so coupled with a charging cable, it's everything you need to operate this flashlight.
I wasn't going to do it, but here we go. It's a complete kit.
Let's talk about battery and charging. So it has an included USB-A to USB-C cable. It's a high quality one, actually really thick compared to the ones that you usually get in flashlights, so it's a nice one. And if you turn to the opposite side of the button, you're going to get the flappy doodle. And notice that the flappy doodle has a little tiny rubber bit right here that you get your fingernail under and lift up. And once you lift that up, it reveals a little tiny light right there. And that light is the charging light. And when you plug in the USB cable, it kind of glows blue and kind of pulses or breathes. And then once it's fully charged, it turns green. The notation on the light itself states that it's 5 volts at 3 amps. So that's about the maximum you can handle over a USB-A port. So that's an excellent fast charging speed. But it's also worth noting that the included battery, which is an excellent Samsung 50E, there it is. This is a high capacity battery with high discharge, and this is a flat top battery, and it can be charged in any standard battery charger. It's also good to note that there's springs on the head side as well as the tail side, so you can use flat tops or button tops. There's enough spring compression here to use all sorts of batteries, so no problems using aftermarket batteries. The two most interesting things about this flashlight is the emitter configuration, which we haven't gotten to yet, and the fact that it is a rotary, kind of semi-rotary interface. So let's talk about that interface now. It's very simple to use, very simple to pick up, but effective. So there's a little rotary dial here that goes one notch this way or one notch this way. And if you turn it to the left, then you're going to get the strobe groups. So let me go ahead and shield this a little bit and turn it to the left, and you'll see the strobe has turned on. If I go back to the center, it is now off. And if I go to the right, we'll be in the solid groups that are just solid white light. Now, when you're in the center, the button will not do anything. It won't turn the flashlight off. Well, to say it won't do anything is actually untrue, because pushing the button will show you the battery gauge right above the button. And this battery gauge is kind of a welcome addition. I do like lights that have voltage checks, and having one so easily accessible is awesome. The E-switch on the side here is a really nice metal E-switch with a little bit of travel, not too much, but it's almost perfectly quiet, and it's metal with a raised metal lip. It's just a really nice, easy to press button that would be hard to accidentally activate. But with the rotary interface, it's impossible to turn this light on accidentally in your pocket. That's the cool thing about rotary dials, is it's nearly impossible to move a rotary dial and then press a button. And this rotary dial is especially kind of stiff in a good way. It takes a fair amount of force to get one way or the other. Now let's take a look. When you're on the main mode groups, which would be to the right, so we'll go over there, it's literally just a low, medium, high, and a turbo. Back to low, medium, high, turbo. So you're just clicking each time. To turn it off, you just push it back towards the center. So on to the right, off to the left. That's it. Now, if you go to the strobes, you're going to get into a strobe group. Then you press, and it puts you in an SOS group. Press again, you go back to strobe. You want to turn it off, go back to center. That's pretty much the entire interface. There's only one additional thing, and that is there's a momentary turbo on both sides by pressing and holding the E-switch. So I'll show it on the strobe side because it's most dramatic there. If I turn it to the strobe and press and hold, you can see I go to turbo, and when I let go, it resumes the strobe. It's just a really simple, elegant, easy to pick up interface. I like interfaces like this on a flashlight. Another thing that really sets this flashlight apart from the crowd is the fact that it's a multi-emitter reflector. You just don't see that very often in a small flashlight like this. And these emitters are not large. These are 35 emitters. In fact, they're Cree XPL HDs. And and if you've watched this channel for long, you know I'm jonesing at trying to get in there and doing an emitter swap for another 35 emitter. I don't know if the amount of amps that are going through this light, because it's supposed to pull 12 amps to these four, I don't know if that's going to be okay with 519As. I think the niches will just turn blue. In fact, these Cree XPL HDs are almost turning blue. They're being driven so hard. You'll see when we do the tint testing in a moment that at the turbo mode, the CCT really creeps up there, almost 7,000-ish range. So let's take a look at that right now. Let's get the Sekonic out here. I'm going to go ahead and kill the video lights for a second to get a more accurate measurement of what's going on. I'll leave that backlight on. Now let's go ahead and throw it into the main group. We are on low right now, and you can see that it's supposed to be a 6500 Cree XPL HD, and it's rated just under 6,000 right now, and it is above BBL. But remember, when you're this high into the blue, it looks more like a cyan, so it's not going to look very green. Now let's go ahead and go a mode higher, take another measurement, and we can see it's still at about 6,000. Let's go a little bit higher, take a measurement. I can see it turning bluer, and there it is. It's 6,600, and it's becoming a little more neutral. And then let's go to the highest mode and check that out. And there you go, 7,000 and a little bit under BBL. A light with the kind of output that the RovyVon S23 has usually is a lot larger. I would put this in the same arena as this Bright PT18 Pro and this Cyan Sky K3. And you can see that it's a little guy compared to those. Those are a little bit larger. And interestingly enough, this Bright PT18 Pro is running on an 18650. Now the K3 is running on a 21700, but so is the RovyVon S23. It's just a really tiny light for having a 21700 in there. A lot of really thoughtful design to make the flashlight barely larger than the cell itself. Another interesting thing about comparing it, not just in size, but in output to the competitors, is that the Bright here is about 1700 lumens. The Cyan Sky is 1400 lumens, and yet this little tiny diminutive S23 is claimed to be 4000 lumens, and I didn't get that, but I got over 1700 and 1400. So right now, this is the king of these guys. Now, I do want to point out the optics are different, and so these are more throwy, this is more floody, but this actually makes a better searchlight, in my opinion, to have a wider beam to locate what you're looking for. Now let's take a look at the Lumen tube and see what it actually does. All right, on low, the S23 is doing 36 lumens. Let's go ahead and go up a mode. And on the medium, we're getting about 250 lumens about. Then on the high, we're getting 1200, maybe 1300 lumens. I'm going to go up a range. And then on the turbo, we're getting 2,400 lumens or so. Now, what I'm going to do...
Okay, guys, I faded out my audio track, and I'm doing some ADR here because when I was editing the video, I realized that I was never on turbo. I was actually on high. You have to press and hold the E switch to get to turbo. So I then proceed in the video to do a ANSI test on what I think is turbo, but it's really high. So I do this test. It starts at 2400 and it barely drops at all. And you may be thinking, hey, you lazy bastard, go back and fix it. Well, I would love to, but I've already emitter swapped the light to XPL high 4000K. So here's what I did for you. I tested the light with the XPL high 4000K, which is less lumens. And instead of getting 2400 on high, I got 1800. Well, since we then can do turbo on the swapped light, I got 2700 on turbo. So using algebra, I'm guessing the light is doing about 3600 lumens. I'm sorry this is super imprecise, but it's the best I can do given what I've done to the light, because I am definitely not swapping it back. So just figure this light probably does 3600 to 3700 lumens, somewhere in that range, which is very close to the stated 4000 lumens. Now back to your regularly scheduled review.
Know that this light just beat out the rest of the field at the same price and higher quality. So this is an excellent light. Okay, we're outside to get some beam shots of the S23 by RovyVon. Now, since it's a quad emitter, let's get a focus on that, quad emitter reflector, I was trying to match it up to a couple lights that I thought would be similar. And what I figured out was maybe it'd be nice to try it against a Hank Wang D4V2 with quad XPL highs. So XPL highs are kind of like a de-domed version of the XPL HD that we're finding in this light. They're both 35 emitters. Now this is a TIR and it's got its aux lights on right now. Then I've also got this PT18 Pro Oathkeeper from Bright. It's also a reflector, but it's a single emitter and it is an XHP 35. But I'll just throw it in there because they're similarly large lights, and I just thought that it might make a good comparison. So let's start out with the quad emitters in the Hank light. Now, these are XPL highs, but they're also 4000K. So these are going to be much warmer than what we're going to find in the P23 by RovyVon. Now, I want to point out that we are exposure locked and we're locked at daylight balance, so everything will be the same between these three. This tree is 20 meters, this tree right here is 55, and then the tree line of 4 palm trees in the back is 150 meters. Let's start out with the D4V2, and I'll go straight to turbo. And there's 20 meters, 50 meters, and then I'm not quite making that tree line, not that I can see. The tree line in the back seems unaffected, but you know, this optic is kind of a floody optic. Let's take a look how the large reflector on the Oath Keeper handles it. It'll do really well. We'll go straight to turbo, and you see there's 20 meters, 55 meters, and we're definitely making that tree in the back. Now it's the RovyVon P23's turn, so we'll turn it on by rotating it, and I will press and hold, and it's a lot of light for a really tiny flashlight. Now it's a little floodier than the Oath Keeper, so it's more lumens. I can tell it's brighter, but it's a little floodier, so that means less candela, and I don't think it's quite making that back tree line. Let's take a look against the D4V2 again, since they're both quad 35-35 emitters and they're both XPLs. So I'll go straight to turbo, and let me hold on turbo here. They're very similar, aren't they? Very similar. You know what though? The Hank light just stepped down. You can tell. Look at how dim it is, and look how this one's still bright. So that is the curse of the Hank light. Is the Hank light just has no sustain. You can see this is the RovyVon P23 is just as bright as when I first went to turbo, but the Hank light, right? I'm gonna have to double click again. There we go. And you might say, well, what's the big deal? Just double click again. Well, the deal is this light is insanely hot right now. Like, ow. Like, it is really hot. So, not a lot of thermal mass here to dissipate. I mean, this is made out of copper, but it just doesn't have the mass. This is a better light for that because it just has more mass. More efficient driver too, I should point that out, because this is a FET enabled driver, so there's a lot of extra heat created, and this one I don't believe is FET, at least from what I saw in the Lumen tube. I don't know what's really under the hood, but it's not getting that hot, and the Lumen tube had such great sustain. I believe this has to be regulated. Again, I don't know for sure. Time for my conclusion. The RovyVon S23 really surprised me. When I was first offered the light, I kind of hesitated for a moment because, you know, it's cool white and that's not really my thing. But then I noticed that it had the quad emitter reflector and I was like, well, that's interesting. Then I read about its rotary interface, and on paper it sounded kind of weird. But then I talked to Zero Air and he said, no, the interface is kind of neat. So I got the light, and I'm really happy to be able to make this video for you because I think now that you can see how it works with your thumb and the E-switch, you can tell that it's a really unique, interesting interface. So I give this a solid recommend. I really like it. If you like cool white, then it's amazing. Just get this light. Now, if you're not into cool white, I can see passing on it. But, you know, I haven't tried to open it yet. I never try to open my lights before I make a review because I don't want to mar the light if it's stuck or I have to use any hard tools. But I feel like getting this bezel off, then popping the reflector out was probably doable. If I do get up the courage to go ahead and pull this light apart in the upcoming months here, I will make a subsequent video about putting LEDs in here. They're going to have to be high amperage LEDs, so I don't know, maybe SST20 4000s or something like that. All right, well, that's it for the light. But while I have you, don't leave yet. I want to remind you that this is, you know, we're in the middle of this barrage of videos I've been releasing, and I am giving away 20 gifts on January 8th. Now, what do you got to do to get the gifts? Well, subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment down below, because I'm going to be going to all the videos I'm making during this lead up to January 8th, and I'm going to be pulling random names and announcing them on January 8th with what your comment was, what the video was, and what you won. So I want everybody to have a chance to win, so make sure you do that. And remember that we can only hit those top prizes. Here, look at this link right here. Look at what this link is, because this describes it. But we want to get those top prizes, so make sure that you get your friends to subscribe as well. That's the whole point here, is I'm trying to give back to you, but also have a little subscriber drive so that hopefully I can get bigger lights for manufacturers. All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, we're at my modding table, and I just used these two strap wrenches here to open up the S23. So it was pretty easy to do. All I had to do was get the fatter strap wrench against the body, put the other one here on the bezel. Oop, the glass just fell out. There was a little bit of Loctite on it, but not gobbed on. And then once the bezel came off, well, you can see the reflector came out and all those centering rings. So I am going to swap this out right now. Doing the emitter swap right there. You can just see the emitters just slid into place. These are XPL high 4000K. Let's do a little diode test here, and they're alive. All right, I got the MCPCB back in, but I don't have the glass on. So I got the optic, but not the glass. Got this conic here. This is the inaugural turning on. There we go. Works. Okay, let's get it on low here. And what do we got here? That is awesome, right? Just under 4,000 and a little bit rosy. Now let's put the glass on and see what happens. All right, so I got the glass on. Let's take another reading. And it's more neutral. All right, that makes sense to me, that it'd be more neutral with the glass on. Let me see if I can get a reflection here for you guys. All right, there we go. So I've got a reflection here of a light, and hopefully you can tell by looking at it that the coatings are kind of purplish, kind of rosy, right? So that means they actually reject magenta hues, so that's one of the reasons why the light actually became a little more neutral.
Okay, let me do some ADR over my hands waving and doing things. So my voice is disconnected from what's going on screen. But I just wanted to let you know that the swap is excellent. I'm not going to go into too many details of how it turned out, because the beauty of the 35-35 footprint in this light is there is a myriad of emitters available, from Samsung LH351Ds to Luminous SST20s. I mean, the list is pretty endless. So you could put pretty much whatever you want in this light. I just like 4000K, and I thought I'd give the XPL highs a chance. They look really great. They're a little bit more ringy, because ringy meaning that the beam has more rings in it because of the fact that they don't have domes. Anyhow, this is an easy light to mod. So if you're a modder and you've watched this far, go forth, get it, and put your own emitters in there. And also, it's a fair assumption that a great amount of people watching this video do not know how to do an emitter swap. So if you click the link on screen right now, you'll see me doing an unedited video where I swap an emitter into a light. Now, it may not be the light you have, but the process is the same on almost every light. So you should learn a whole lot about it, and it'll give you the background knowledge to do your own emitter swap. Thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you in the next video.